Good evening, good evening, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are watching and catching this masterclass series from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am very excited that I am with my big brother, Thebe Ikalafeng. Oscar Makatukela is already saying, let's go. So, everybody who's joining us, please let us know where you're joining us from. We'd love to give you a shout out. But let me first start off by shouting out our very special guest this evening, the brand guru himself, Thebe Ikalafeng, big brother of mine. Thank you so much for making time to chat with us today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's my turn today.
It is your turn today. And I wanted to actually introduce you by saying that, you know, it's not oftentimes I meet people who I don't know at all. And the first thing they say to me is, when are you sleeping on yourself? And I don't know if you remember, that's actually how the very first conversation we had, we were at CNBC Africa. I was interviewing you. And after interviewing you, I just remembered that your energy was so amazing. And a couple of months later, I bumped into you somewhere on the continent, and you said, I'm here to give you feedback. You're sleeping on yourself. You need to do more. You need to travel more. And so that, I feel, epitomizes who you are. You just see so much more for others, and you become a pathway for other people to step into their own greatness. And I just want to thank you before we start, because I think you're absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Nos.
Senzeni, welcome. Senzeni is saying hello to Thebe. This is his friend all the way in London. Thebe, one of the things that I love to start off with in these conversations is just to not get into the serious stuff first, just to get a little bit lighthearted, to get to know you a little bit more intimately, and then we'll get into the serious stuff. We call this our rapid fire questions, right? So you don't have time to think about it. I want quick responses, and let's see how we go. So, Thebe, at a party with your friends, are you the singer, the dancer, the DJ? Which role are you occupying?
I think I'm the DJ. I'm
Very
definitely the DJ because I'm conducting the choir.
You're
I'm
conducting the
conducting the
choir.
music. I'm getting everybody happy. That's me. I'm the DJ. Not a
Okay,
conductor, I'm a DJ.
you're the
I'm
conductor
providing the
slash DJ. You're not
I'm
on the
providing
dance.
the energy.
You're giving the energy, because I've seen your dance moves, and I can attest to the fact that they are not quite there. What's the, what is the one? What's the nickname that some of your friends call you by?
No, I'm so lucky. I've never ever had nicknames. It's crazy. So I've never had nicknames, perhaps because my name was always so strong and so, and that's what I've always just been called Thebe. And the lazy ones just say T, and the newer ones say Msafiri, traveler. So, but but I don't have nicknames. It's the funniest thing about me, my entire life.
We're going to talk a lot about your travels in a little bit, but the most memorable place you've ever been to in the world.
Most memorable place, it has to be Ethiopia in 2019 on January 6 or 7, in the middle of the night, 200,000 people in Lalibela around, and I was in top of the mountain with the priests, and I don't think I can ever forget that evening. So I think it's one place that's imprinted in my memory.
So, Thebe, what's playing music-wise for you in your house or in your car? What are you listening to?
I'm very eclectic. I can go to Rush in a minute from Nigeria. I can go to Dolly Parton. I'm incredibly eclectic. I don't have a particular song. It depends on particular moods.
The one thing that you're a little bit embarrassed about that you wish people didn't know about you?
There's no such thing. There's no such thing. I think, we're living in such an open digital time that they probably know everything they need to know about us that is permissible or that we're sharing with them. But generally, I don't know. I'm just a boring person in truth. Most people think I'm all out energy on top of the world, running up and down, but just an introvert. I'm better at home.
So that's really interesting. Thebe Ikalafeng, an introvert. Senzeni is confirming the absence of your dance moves. Thank you very much,
That's
Senzeni,
because
for
she's
that.
jealous and because she cannot dance because she's got two left legs herself.
So let's get into some of the serious stuff. Thebe, would you describe yourself as an unlikely leader? And the reason why I'm asking that question, if you think about where you come from, Kimberly, you know, was there ever the sense that I belong amongst people that my continent would refer to and consider as a leader?
Well,
Unlikely leader or very likely leader?
I come from Kimberley, 1871, the Diamond Rush that produced Wits University, that is now one of the best universities in the continent. A place that has started the first street lights, in South Africa and Africa, the first trams. So I've always been and I've always been top of my class for most of the rest of my school life. I think I've always been top of my universe wherever I am, and I've just kept expanding on that. I used to teach my classmates. I was number one the rest of my school life. So I think we are all leaders, and I've always led in my sphere.
I wouldn't have pictured you as the nerd in the class, maybe the jokester in the class or the energy in the class. And so
I was
that's
not a nerd. I was not a nerd, but I
so
was
fun.
certainly I was not a nerd, but I was the smartest, and I used to tell them that. I used to tell my friends. I remember in standard eight, which is grade 10. My one friend says, "This year we are dealing with you. There is no way in hell you can be number one for so many years that we've known you in class." I'm like, but you know, it's my thing. You, my thing. It's gonna get it. I knew how to, and I still have the same habits. By the way, is I play hard and I study hard. But I'm
Mm.
not one of those guys who spend all the time in the library. I never did. And matter of fact, when I finished my undergrad, it was a 4-year degree which I finished in 4 years, and I never told anybody that I finished a 4-year degree in 3 years. They just saw me the following year when I finished my MBA, which I did about 10 months or so, and they couldn't believe it, because when we arrived at the graduation and they saw me wearing these beautiful graduate gowns, and they were all wearing the cheap undergraduate gowns, and they were laughing at me, because this is their memory of me: the guy who plays table tennis all the time, the guy who's always holding court and talking stupid jokes, the guy who's always dodging class and running to watch Michael Jordan in Chicago, or Michael Jordan in somewhere around the world, the guy who's always traveling. So that's what they remember. But when it's time to class, when it's time to study, time for exams, I always study when it's time in private. A friend of mine told me when I was young, he was 20 or something, he said, overt preparation for overt action. They don't have to see you studying. They don't have to see you working hard. They just have to see you having arrived. And that's how I've been my whole life. Play hard and succeed well.
Would you say that maybe that's part of your leadership recipe, Thebe, that you are able to infuse work and play a lot more intentionally than a lot of people? Because we oftentimes think it's a trade-off, right? That you've either got to be this identity or that identity.
I came across a beautiful quote, and it says, "The master in the art of life is always playing and always working. He just doesn't know the difference between the two." And I think what I've learned, people always say to me, even now, they say to me, "Kanti, when do you work? You're always traveling." I said, when I'm traveling, I'm working. When I'm working, I'm traveling. I said, at any point, I can't make the difference between the two, because I've reached a point in my life where I've been able to blend the two so beautifully, so that
Yeah.
I do the type of work that feels like it's play, and I do the type of play that feels like it's work. So I could
Mm.
never tell the difference, which is which is which. I just know that the most important thing that matters is to be happy at all times, and not to do the work that upsets you, and not to do the play that takes away from you. So that at any point in time, both of them should be working for you.
So I'm going to challenge you a little bit, Thebe, because a lot of people would come back and say, work isn't always a happy place. People will talk about toxic work cultures, they'll talk about difficult bosses, they'll talk about difficult teammates. But it sounds like for me, as I listen to you, that your happiness in work and your happiness in play is not determined by your environment and other people and what they're doing. And so
Absolutely.
it's a long-winded way of saying, Tebe, how do you then exercise the discipline of staying happy?
That is such an important question. So if you see my autobiography is coming out in what 2 months or so, and people are going to get to see in that I spent so much time fighting, working hard, all those things, and playing at the same time, because it's always been part of my recipe. Because part of my how I lead my life is, as you've said, is never ever to let the place where I am to determine the joy that I get out of it. So I
Mm,
singularly have been able to separate myself throughout time, out of any situation, and focus on the goal at hand. So I keep my eyes on the prize. What am I doing? What am I doing here for? What's my purpose? Why am I supposed to be? What am I engaged for? What drives me? And because the truth of the matter is, any environment, whether it is corporate, and you'll see for example, when the book comes out, I talk about some of the challenges at work. I talk about some of the challenging bosses, the challenging employees, the challenging tasks, and all those. But I never quite let any of those affect me, because you see, the problem is that if you focus all your energies on the negatives, then they drag you down. You need to focus your energy on the things that excite you and the things that brought you here. And if you
yeah.
don't like the place, you move. Matter of fact, I mean, I spent my first job, I was there for 1 year, less than 1 year. The next one I was there for 8 months. Next one was for 14 months. And friends of mine kept saying, Thebe, you are changing jobs too often. I said, I'm not changing jobs too often. I said, I'm trying to find the place that best matches who I am. And then when I
Mm.
find that place, that's when I stayed the longest.
So I have a suspicion that I might know the place where you stayed the longest, because
It's, it's
I think that's where I first came across the name Thebe Ikalafeng. So let me tell you a story about myself, Thebe, that you don't know. When you were at Nike, I
yes.
actually came to interview for a job, and it was not you who interviewed me. But suffice to say, I didn't get the job. But the person who emulated what being a brand guru, even in that moment, was yourself. If you take us back to your days at Nike, what did you take from that experience?
A
And
couple
what
of
and how do you still use that today?
a couple of things. So my first few jobs felt like work, but I had
Mm,
great relationships which were able to distract me from the work, so I can focus on finding the right place for myself. When I arrived at Nike, first I arrived there reluctantly. I remember it was 1996 or so, and I was called to some place in Kalami by interview by some Dutch guy, and he says to me, "Wanna interview for a job?" I said, where? To sell sneakers. First, I refused to do that. I said, to sell sneakers. I said, I wear suits. I wear custom-made suits. I wear beautiful ties. I mean, if you remember, that's all I did for so long. I said, that's who I am. I can't be seen here working for sneakers. But anyway, he says to me, let's fly you to America and go figure out if you really don't want this. Without a job, by the way. Without a job, they flew me to America, and I got to Beaverton, which is the headquarters of Nike, and I saw the environment, the entrepreneurial spirit, the innovative space, and all that exciting. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is an amazing place to work. Then I came back and asked me, do you still want the job? They say, you still don't want the job? I said, you know what? I want the job. Because a couple of things happened at the job, which was so interesting. First, when I got to the Beaverton, I met a guy called Nigel Ferris, and I think Nigel Ferris. Nigel Ferris had been one of the early employees of Nike. And
mm,
I sat down with him, and he explained to me what drives that brand, the values of the organization, the diligence, why they apply, how they do things, why they exist. He says, Thebe, we used to sit around, and Phil Knight and Bill Bauman, who founded Nike, they'd go around the athletic fields, they'll be cutting shoes to make sure they fit the athletes and to make sure the athletes can perform better. And when I came back, I was like, I actually like the story.
mm,
I like the
mm,
values of the organization. But then I should say, but the second part of it, so there was the values part, which really resonated. I said, oh my goodness, here's a place that I can relate to in terms of why they do things. There's a beautiful why. So if you can find an organization that's got a great why, to me, that's the first magic. The second magic was Nike in South Africa when I joined was $29 million rand. It was 29 million rand. It was number 3. I think Reebok was number 1. Adidas number 2, or the other way around. And at time, at the time when I joined, it was very entrepreneurial. It was owned 76% by 74% by Ndabanzele, Solicitole, Sam Noinyani, Standard Bank, and Faisal Surti, which you all know those names, and the rest of it, 26, was owned by Nike International. So it was so Nike was involved but not involved. So it's a very entrepreneurial environment, and as an entrepreneurial environment, it was the second part that resonated with me. Let me pause there for a second and take you back before I joined Nike. Before I joined Nike, I went for an interview, and I met a guy called John Sherritt, a headhunter. He was trying to interview me to get me to join Southern Sun. I was already at Sun International then. Once he gave me to join Southern Sun for one of the most inspirational leaders at that time, and he didn't give me, and he said to me, "You didn't get." It says, "I can't recommend you for the job." I said, "What do you mean?" Because you know, when you go for job interviews, I'm sure as well, where the ones you've got, you already, and when you love the place, you start envisioning, "Oh my goodness, my first salary, I'm gonna buy this. When I get there, I'm gonna dress like this. I'm gonna go to these places." Because you begin to imagine what the job is going to do for you. And he says to me, "Not gonna get." He says, "Thebe, I don't want to recommend you." I said, "Why, Mr. Sherritt?" He says, "Because you're unemployable." I said, "What do you mean I'm unemployable?" He says to me, "You're a very entrepreneurial guy. You're a very single-minded guy. You like your thing. You like to direct the show. You don't like to be directed." He says, "You like to be leading." And he says, and says to me, "If I were you, if I can't find a place like that, I would rather be on my own." I'm like, "John, I'm only 28, 29. What am I going to do? I don't know anything about my jobs, about working." And when I got to a Nike, I arrived at a place which was just like, which allowed me to do that. A place that was at the bottom, a place that required an entrepreneurial thinking, not too much interference from Nike International. We could do so much. When they were doing campaigns with Michael Jordan, with Tiger Woods and all those, I was like, "No, let's do them with rugby, let's do them with cricket, let's do them with soccer." And those are all the if you will, the sports that Nike International was not involved in at that time. They hadn't signed the Brazils of the world, they hadn't signed Manchester United, they hadn't signed the Springboks. So at that time, it was an entrepreneurial environment with a strong sense of values and a great why. You must work for us. And those 3 things resonated with me. Matter of fact, when I left because those 3 things were no longer existing.
Thebe, you've said so much, and I just want to pause on a little bit because I think there's just so many gems in what you've said. One of the things that stands out for me is how the no that came before Nike was actually the biggest yes you needed in your life. And I want you maybe to hear some of your reflections on that. How do we distinguish? Or maybe let me ask you, how have you managed when the response has been either a flat out no or a not now, to be able to see and hear the yes that comes from that? And how do you turn those no's into yeses? Or was it completely out of your control and just by sheer luck that Nike was the next step?
I think it was by sheer luck. I mean, let me tell you, when I first applied for my first job, when I got my MBA, I sent 80 letters to 80 of the top companies in America, which have got the link to South Africa. And I said, "I want to work in America first, then I want to come to South Africa." And 79 of them sent me no. I did not sit around and try and cut up my wrists and say 79 people focus. I said no. I focused on the one yes. And I said, how do I build on the one yes rather than focus on the 79 no's? So I think the most important thing that drives your ability to be able to make the right decisions for yourself is a self-awareness and a self-understanding and a self-acceptance. Because if you're aware of who you are, if you're aware that because I've said already from high school, because I was always top of the class, so I knew I had to work for a top company because I'm a top performer. So I had that already in my mind, right, as part of my thing. So I had a sense of self of what matters to me, what makes a good environment for me is when I'm in charge, and when I'm leading, and when the place is at the top of its game, or when the place is challenging and I can make something out of it. To me, turning the no into your understanding, or being able to recognize the no from the yes, I think it's a combination of knowing yourself more than anything else. Know yourself, know what matters to you, and know and always put yourself at the center. People always say, think about the company. No, don't think about the company. Think about yourself. Because when you know yourself well, and and that company knows itself well, and the two of you are aligned, then it's magic. The problem is when you're trying to force yourself onto an organization, or the organization is trying to force itself onto you, it's never a happy ending. It never ends well.
So I want to pause on three things because I know I'm going to forget them. So you're going to have to hold me accountable. I want to talk about this magic that you talk about in the intersection between yourself and an organization. I want to talk about the transition from awareness to acceptance, because I think that's really powerful. And I see that advocate Meliswa has also picked up on it. And then I maybe want to talk about this idea of knowing yourself. So let's go back to the first one. You spoke about the importance of the story of an organization speaking to you, and almost you being able to see yourself in the frame of that storyline. For the entrepreneurs who are listening in on this conversation, how do we get it right? For the people that we're going to want to attract with our story, what are the component parts of building a great organizational story that will attract people to want to work with you and for you?
I think always people, when it comes to the business that I do, the business of building brands, I said the first and most important thing is clarity. It's the clarity about your purpose, the clarity about your vision, the clarity about your values. Because if you can define those, it means you have out there to you as an organization. Because then the people who come to you must also have a clarity about themselves, a purpose about what drives them, and to me, that's the most important part first. And most organizations, most entrepreneurs, and all of us, and all those, when we start businesses, the first thing we think about is how to make money, how to start the business, instead of trying to define the why we exist, the why you're getting into this. Because a whole lot of us want to get into business to make money. I guess it's fine as well as for many people. But so if that is your why for starting the business, but most people get into business and they make money out of accident, and the business works out of accident, and they say, I guess that's what it is. So even that business that's gone on for 2-3 years, 5 years, and is successful, and having worked with some of those type of organizations as well, you can also always pause at any point and say, what actually is it that we do here, and why have we been successful, and can we now code that magic? So it's important to either write that story at the beginning, or to reflect back on why you are where you are, and reflect back on what got you to where you are, and then take that and capture that as this is the magic of why we exist. The problem is, if you don't do that, you are just on a roller coaster. You actually have no clue why you're successful. You have no clue why you're making money. You have no clue why everybody wants to work for you. And as a result, people come and go all the time, but also you go up and down all the time. So if you have clarity about your business, you have defined what matters about your business, you can ride all storms, because the purpose is the most beautiful thing that keeps you going. I think it's Friedrich Nietzsche says, if you can find the why for existing, you can find, if you know the why if you know the why for existing, you can find almost any how to get to it.
Oh, I'm seeing the comments. Melissa is saying this is about coding the magic, as you've said. So many people are reacting to the way you are articulating the importance of clarity, and just the simplicity of asking, what do we do here? What makes us successful? What challenges us? I think that's really, really fantastic. Let me get to I'm going to combine the second and the third issue that you raised that really, it really hit me. And this is the question of transitioning from awareness to acceptance, because sometimes we can become aware, but we might not be accepting of what we find when we discover ourselves over and over again. And you then talk about your sense of self. Is there a thing about you, Thebe, that you became aware of and was hard to accept? And how did you then get to acceptance, especially if it is something you did not like?
Well, it's, a couple of things, maybe, or maybe one thing in terms of how I got to it. First, I was at Wits, and I failed at Wits my first year. I failed 3 subjects out of 5, and they were all 47, 47, 47. And I said, I can't be equally dumb. It's impossible to get three similar thingy.
Yeah.
Of course, I knew that time it was a time when they were rationing, managing how many black students can go forward in subjects. Particularly, it was law and accounting where they did that to me. And of course, I challenged it, but I went nowhere. But I came back the following year and I just told myself, but I'm a winner. I'm a very successful person. I come from a background of always being the best. So I repeated a couple of those took new ones, and I passed very well. And I applied to go to the US. When I got a scholarship to go to the US. When I arrived in the US, I met Sbusiso Khadebe in a nightclub in Denison. And he used to be at Wits at one stage. And he saw me there and says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I'm here to finish my." I didn't say I was doing accounting at Wits.
Yeah.
And and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm here to do accounting, to finish my accounting degree." He's like, "But Thebe, you're not an accountant." So now imagine. I said, "What do you mean I'm not an accountant?" I said, he says you're more like a marketer. He says, the sooner you accept that about yourself, the more success, the better you're going to be. Now, here's the other thing about self-awareness is sometimes you see yourself, or sometimes you are yourself, and other people, and many times people can tell you who you are. Because whatever people say about you, truth is, it is what you are giving off. It is people do not go out of their way to try and recharacterize you. People are only reflecting what you are giving. So when he said so, Sibusiso, I said to Sibusiso, nobody respects marketer, Sibusiso. I said, Sibusiso, you're either a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant. Those are respectable, and I'm going to be an accountant, a CA. But what I did do then, is I didn't really deal with it, and I didn't really start questioning myself, because I think the other important thing is never ever question yourself. Just be yourself. And I arrived, at university in Milwaukee, Marquette University. I arrived there, and I was front row accounting because that's what I want to do. Back row marketing, because that's it's a liberal arts degree, so you do marketing, philosophy, accounting, all those things. HR, so I sat in front for accounting and back and then by the end of my 3rd year, which actually was because what I did is when I always took the maximum load of classes, and I always did summer school, which is how I finished all my degree, my 4-year program in 3 years. And the other thing that I always did is, I think I did it for 2 or 3 classes. I remember my statistics class. I said to my teacher, I said, "Prof, I've already been in class with you 1 year, 1 semester. I'm now into the 2nd semester. And the previous semester I got an A. And the 2nd semester I said to Prof, are you going to teach us the same way that you did?" He says, "Yes." I said, "Prof, are you going to give us, is the only mark that matters the one at the end of the year? Because you made us do exams throughout, and you only marked us at the end of the semester and gave that as a final mark." He says, "Yes." I said, "Prof, I will see you at the final exams." Never attended the class. And I came back for the finals, wrote the finals, and got an AB, which is just below an A. And I did the same for English as well. English, did the same. Prof says, "Thebe, you got 3 A's in English already for 3 semesters." Same professor. And he says, "For your 4th one, by mid-semester, I was getting an A again." And the prof says, "So what you going to do?" I said, "Prof, what are the options?" He says, "The options are you don't have to come to," he says, "you don't have to come to class for the rest of the year, because you already know what you're going to get." He said, "We already know what you're going to do." I said, "Prof, say no more." So that allowed me to be able to save time with many of these classes, which enabled me to really fast track my program. I forgot what was the question again? Let me finish it off, Polly.
No. This was the awareness to acceptance question. And so how
awareness acceptance, yes. So
yeah.
Thank you. So as a result, because of what people know and see in you, you have to believe in them. So now there's two things about brands, about personal brands, about individual brands, about leadership brands. There's what you call your default brand and what you
Mm-hmm.
call your design brand. Your default brand is who you are
Mm.
without any effort. Is who you are when nobody is watching. Is who you are when you're under no microscope. Is who you are when you think nobody sees you and you just being yourself. That's your default brand. Now, when you have a default brand, you now have a choice. The choice you have few questions to yourselves, which is not the awareness part. The questions about is that, are you okay with what you're seeing? Because you're going to get feedback, remember? We're going to get
Mm.
feedback. People are going to tell you, oh, Thebe is so arrogant, or Thebe is so helpful, or they're going to say, Thebe is so smart. They're going to say all those things about you. So the question you ask yourself is, what they say, is that how I feel about myself? Or
Mm.
what they say, is that how I want to be me, myself? If the question is yes, then you stick to a default brand. But if the question is, I don't like what they say about me because it is not true about me, perhaps I'm not showing the right things about me, perhaps I'm not presenting myself as well. So, what you then do is you then design your brand. So, now in the
Mm.
design brand, you now have to have a journey. You now have to say, how do I transition from this default to design? But the most important thing throughout all this is authenticity. You
Mm.
have to be authentic. It has to be credible. So you can't design something that you cannot sustain and that you cannot deliver on. So the design brand does not mean creating something that you're not. It
Yeah.
just says aligning your default and your design, reducing the gap
The
between your
dissonance.
default, right? So that how you are naturally is how you would be if you were aware and you had to design how you want to be. At the end of the day, to me, it's about authenticity and about credibility. And part of awareness is being able and open to people criticizing you. So a lot of us hate a couple of things. We hate criticism and we hate gossip. Now, those two things are probably the two most fundamental things that you must invite, you must accept. They are
Mm.
going to tell you, they're going to gossip about you, they're going to talk about you. Whatever they say about you, it is the absolute truth about who you are and how you present yourself then. And whatever criticism they give you, it is people do not just wake up to
Mm.
go and try and gossip about you. They don't just wake up and try. So why would they say negative things about you and say positive things about somebody else? You
Yeah.
must ask yourself the question. You must ask this question. You said, how come they always say negative things about me, but I only say positive things about them? What's so special about them? It's what you give off. It's how you present yourself. So when you allow yourself to really honestly engage with the criticism about yourself, to engage with the gossip about yourself, then you are in a good space because you are able to act, you are able to transition to what matters. Because whatever they say, it is the absolute truth. Deal with it. Your job is how you deal with it is the part of the acceptance. You either accept what they are, and acceptance does not necessarily mean accept and make it who you are. Acceptance says, I accept their perspective, do not agree with it. I think I need to reorient, I need to reframe so that they can truly get to experience me as I know I am.
So I just feel like we got a super master class on branding right now. If you notice, my mouth was shut throughout that because I'm like, there is no interjection that is going to, add to that. And I've heard a couple of things, reducing the dissonance between your default and your design brand, and taking criticism, feedback, gossip as data to get you to that reduced state of dissonance. I feel like we can write a paper around this model of D's, right? The data, the dissonance, the default, and the design. It is absolutely powerful, Thebe. And thank you for sharing all of that. Now, I want to weave this back to you because when you started in that very long response, you spoke about how you see yourself at the top, doing challenging things with freedom, because I'm also hearing an element of freedom. Where does your sense of self derive from? Because oftentimes we step into the world and we wait for the world to tell us who we are or how we should be. You seem to have a deep clarity about where you belong in the world, how you belong in the world, and how you're going to be in the world. When did this sense of this is who Thebe is and this is where Thebe belongs, where did that start?
I think it started in the foundational years. And
Mm,
let me say a few things about my foundational years. So when I was growing up, I would start tennis, I would do football, I would do violin, I did piano, I did choral, I did chess, I did everything. And I kept, some of them I did for 3 months, but actually I always say to people, I didn't do them for a short time. I did them up to the point where I reached the height of my incompetence or whatever you call it. When I got to a point where I say, Yabana, this one is not my thing, I move on. But what happened in throughout all those, my mother, my grandmother, and all those, they never criticized it. They would say something like, "Hey, Tebe, when are you always doing different things? So what are we? So we're into piano now." And because remember all these things, and you've got a beautiful boy, and you know all these things. What happens is every time you try something, it's like a pendulum. You're going this way. You go at some stage, you will reach a level of rest, and that
mm,
rest. But to get to that level of rest, you must first do everything. You
yeah.
must do everything that is presented to you. And you must be in an environment which does not criticize, which does not stop you from
Mm,
exploring. So I think because I explored so much and I was given the freedom to explore growing up, I arrived at a point where I then said, this is what I like. This is who I
mm,
am. And then it allowed me, as well as I keep growing, to be able to do the same thing. So whether it's taking different classes and seeing which one works, because I'm allowed to do that, and whether it's changing a job, my friend Karen Duchenne says to me, she says to me, Tebe, you can't be 2 months here, 4 months here, 3 months here. But I was used to that. I was used to doing football, tennis, violin. It's the same thing. So until you reached a level of rest, which says this here I'm comfortable with, and I move forward to it. I think to me the most important thing is the freedom to explore and the
mm,
freedom to fail, and I was allowed both those. I was allowed the freedom to explore, and I was allowed the freedom to explore. And those freedoms are very, very important because they help to shape who you are, and they
mm,
allow you to accept who you are. And because a lot of times is when you go out into the world, they're going to criticize you. Take it as input or data, as you say, as feedback.
mm,
They are going to try and bring you down.
mm,
Don't worry, you don't have to be validated by them. You have to validate yourself by who you are, where you want to go in life, and what matters to you. To me, that freedom to explore and to experiment allowed me, and being in a nurturing environment that allowed. I'm a township kid, so I didn't grow up in. So just because I did violin and piano does not mean I grew up privileged. But even in that environment, whether you're growing up in a township, whether you're growing up in a suburb, is you must be given the freedom to explore and to experiment and to just challenge yourself. And I think to me, from a personal level, that's what helped me to become who I am. I never judge myself according to other people. Even up to now, even up to today, I don't really care which of my friends are rich or which are successful or which are smart or which are dumb. I just care about what matters to me, because that's who I want to present to them. I want
mm,
them to present the authentic Thebe. So when they engage with me, they engage with me not in a competitive level, but but if you will,
even.
that complements who they are, rather than a compare. Because most of us, you know what we do? We're trying to compete with everybody else around us. We're trying to compete with the world. But the only person that matters is the man on the mirror.
Mm.
If you do well for that person, if you can compete, you can allow that person to reach their goals, you will not have to worry about everybody else around you.
Sure. So there's a book that popped up in my mind as you're speaking, from somebody who I didn't realize was an author, because I know him as an actor, and that's Matthew McConaughey. And there's a book called Green Lights that he's written, and he describes your mother and the other people in your household who raised you, people who are always a green light, and the importance of being a green light to others. And a green light is a person who just says, you have permission to go and try and do and be and fail and try again and get up again. And I just wanted to also reflect that on you, because I think you're a green light in many ways. You go out of your way to affirm people, to encourage them, and to support them as they're trying different things. And I count myself amongst those people that you have
Thank
supported in
you.
that way. So let me ask you this. You're in your home, because I recognize that space. And I would actually offer that there are a lot of people who actually also recognize the space. And that's because you are very generous with your time, your home, your relationships, your networks. Um, your generosity goes to the extent of feeding us. At a drop of a text, one gets invited for dinner to break bread with you. I want to ask you whether generosity is a leadership strategy. And I'll tell you why I'm asking. I think a lot of people think that in order to get ahead, you need to extract out of your community. And what I've seen from you is you go to the extent of nourishing us and feeding into your community. You give into that community. Why? Why that tract? And how do you use that to further, really nourish and nurture your community?
I don't know if it's the Bible phrase that says, "To whom much is given, much is expected," something of that nature. But I know what that means, because when I was a young man, when I got to Colgate, it was so interesting. As one example, is I always surrounded by people who were constantly feeding me. My mentor, Philip Berry at Colgate, would take me around to says, you must, when you shop, he says, you must shop at these places. You must eat at these places. And he'll explain to me why later on. He says, because, Thebe, for you to get ahead, this is where you need to be, and this is what people who get ahead do. So, and he'll buy me books, and he'll do all those things. So all that, and he exposed me to his family, his children, and so throughout all those, I was, in many ways, it was shaping how I look at life as well. Because I was also looking at life as a part of growth. For you to grow, you must give. And because when you give, you grow more. And because what's the beauty about teaching is that the more you teach, the better you become at that which you are teaching. So generosity is founded in that space as well. Because if you want to grow, you cannot withhold. If you want to be successful, you cannot withhold. You have to give. You have to give of your time. You have to give of your knowledge. You have to give of your resources, because the more you do that, the better you become and the more you get in life. And to me, that's what matters to me. What matters to me is not to be rich. What matters to me is not to hog everything that I have. Matters to me is that when my time comes and all is over, I think it is I forget this one woman says, I want to be empty. I want to be used up. I want to have nothing left. I want to have no money, no talent when I die. And she said, I want to, Emma Bromberg is the name. She says, I want to look my maker in his eyes and say, I used everything you gave me. Because, we can sit here and hog all the knowledge, hog all the food, hog all the time, hog all the resources. When you die, you're going to leave it all behind. So isn't it better to just give? And to me, I think part of being a great leader is the ability to give, it's just to give. I think you remember the night before, I got on a doctorate from UJ, and I was listening to everybody, all 100 plus people, so many people were there speak, and I was like, this is so interesting. All their stories revolved around giving and time that I've given in, and then and I said, I guess that's why I'm getting what I'm getting, because
Mm.
I've given what I've given. So to me, it is give, 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 and you shall receive plenty. The question is, what is plenty to you? So you need to define plenty, and plenty to me is a sense of satisfaction, a happiness that I have given much of what I've given to somebody who probably needs it more than I do, and because that's why we're given what we're given. We're not given what we're given to bloat. We're given what to do to bloat. We're given what we're given so that we must go on and multiply.
I want to die empty. I want to die absolutely used up. I'm going to be taking that on for myself, but I want to just pick up a couple of comments here, Thebe. I wanted to pick up Yvonne Chef. And Yvonne, thank you. I see that you were with us yesterday as well. Yvonne says generosity is definitely a leadership quality, and Dr. T is just so generous with his time, with his expertise, his sound advice, and he gives all of this with such sincerity and with such authenticity. There's also a lot of reaction to the comment you made about how the more you teach, the more you learn, the more you grow, the more, and I just think that is just so very, very true. Sia Sanga says, oh, a goal of mine too from here on is dying empty. Vulcan, thank you so much. Vulcan says he's very generous. He's invited me twice to his office in 2019 just to teach me about branding and marketing. I wonder, I worry that on the back of that, you might be getting a lot of DMs and messages from people to say, I too want to be Vulcan. Give, and you will receive. So, Thebe, I've got but 15 minutes left with you. You are probably the most well-traveled person I know. And I've gone through a couple of passports myself, but you are by far the most well-traveled person I know. Before we talk about all the nice things about traveling, take us into your confidence, because every time you travel, you are confronted with different cultures, different languages, different people. What is your mindset to ensuring that that difference is an additive, positive experience and not something that is jarring and too different? And the reason why I ask it is that for some of us, we struggle with difference at a very granular level. And yet you go and you confront distance and difference at a distance. How do you deal with jarring difference, and how do you make it work for you?
Very simple. I leave my country at my airport so that when I arrive, I am open to receiving a new experience, new people. And everywhere I go, and people, when I'm West Africa, they think I'm West African. East Africa, they think I'm East African. Because when I arrive, first I dress like they do, I eat what they eat. But the important reason I do what I try to do there is to open myself to learn, open myself to accepting, open myself to growing. So if you take your country with you wherever you go, then it becomes the filter of how you receive everything. Because if you arrive in another country and you're like, if I were in South Africa, things would be working this way. If I were, well, you are not in South Africa. You are not in your country. You are not at your mother's place. You are not at your company. So the job, so to grow, to be able to thrive in new environments and among new people is to open yourself up to new ideas, new people, new experiences. I saw a beautiful quote that says, if you reject the food, you reject the religion, you reject the faith, the food, the religion, and the customs, then you'll do better if you stay home. Because what's the point of traveling? The point of traveling is to discover new faiths, to discover new foods, discover new clothes, discover new people. And everywhere I go, there's a couple of things I do. The one thing that I always do is I'm always with people. And I was trying to explain to people that I've been to 122 countries, and every country in the continent, obviously. And I explain to people that in Africa, you go to people. Everywhere else in the world, you go to things. So when you go to London, you want to see Big Ben, you want to see Buckingham. You go to Paris, you want to see the Eiffel Tower, the Tour Eiffel. You go to New York, you want to see Statue of Liberty. So you go to things. But when you go to Africa, when you go to the rest of our continent, the first thing that happened, what did people do? Oh, you must come over to eat. Or you must come meet my friends. So you realize that our continent is a continent of people. It's a continent of Ubuntu. It's a continent of that is very welcoming. So because of that, you must be open to be welcomed. You must be a good guest, and don't bring your country with you.
So I feel so embarrassed because I'm taken to a moment where I carried my country so heavily on my identity that, it was like a shock to hear somebody say, you don't have to be that right now. And very quickly, I remember it was my first time going to study abroad, and I'd arrived in London, and I was staying in this apartment with a girl from Ukraine, a girl who's now my best friend, who's half American, half Korean, a boy who was Greek, myself, and a British boy. And I looked around and I said, "Oh, I'm the only Black person here." And their response was, "Oh, we didn't notice
We didn't
because,
notice.
we didn't." And I just remember thinking, I'm carrying this identity of being a Black South African woman everywhere I go. And so as you're sharing the story of leaving all that you know to be true of your world to give yourself the permission to be curious about the worlds of others is so important. But here's a quick follow-up, and then I want to lift up some comments. Thebe, as I want us to come back home to our own problems. As Black South Africans, we often struggle as we enter corporate spaces in South Africa that are, to some extent, a lot of the time, culturally white. And some of that traumatic experience of our history makes us hold on to our identity and our cultures and who we are even more. How do we get to a place of finding each other where we kind of go, actually, we can co create a culture together? You bring your little bit of Blackness, I'll bring my Africanness, and you bring your whiteness, and you bring your coloredness or what, Indianness or whatever the case is. Do you think that we are moving in that direction as a country where we can begin to let go of all of these things because we are intentionally trying to co-create something new and magical together?
The challenge for South Africa, the biggest problem for South Africa is the lack of a unifying vision of who do we want to be as a country that glues us together and towards that. Because the one thing we cannot change being Zulus, Xhosa, Tswana, Spedis, and all those, because that's the color that makes us such a rich country, a very diverse country. But if we all had a goal towards, so you go to America, they'll tell you, I'm American. And you know what that means. They mean I'm entrepreneurial. They know that I can think out of the box. They know that I can challenge. They know that I think big. And what they think, they say that. And they say, but the one thing that guides us is the freedom of ability to do and be what you want, which is what America does. So when I arrived in Rwanda for the first time in 2013, and a porter was helping me to go up to my room, and I was like, interesting. This question is always tricked me. I said, "Are you Hutu or Tutsi?"
Mm.
And he says to me, "I'm neither." I'm thinking,
Yeah.
what does it mean he's neither? He says, "I'm Rwandan. We don't speak like that in my country." The one thing Paul Kagame did very well, he tried to create a country and a vision for a country that everybody is striving towards. It doesn't take away the fact that there are Hutus and Tutsis in the country, because that's who we are. That's who people are. So South Africa's challenge, South Africa's challenge is, what are we all working towards? So because we arrive in the center here, and most of us are working for the white people, the Black people, the coloreds, the Indians, none of us is working for the one thing. There's no one thing that we are fighting for in South Africa. And if we can find that one thing, if we can have a leadership that helps us to drive, that takes us towards the one place, then South Africa will be in a good place. Until then, we're always going to be fighting. We're going to be fighting for the land. We're going to be fighting for the jobs. We're going to be fighting for the opportunities. But none of us are fighting for South Africa.
Oh, to me, Modise, you've just articulated and paraphrased Thebe so beautifully. To me says, this is amazing to hear. Whenever I'm asked, where are you from? My answer is, I'm from everywhere. And I just love that, Dumi, because I think that's so powerful. And this is what I'm hearing from you as well, Thebe. And of course, the question of the South African project and each and every one of our role in that is so really powerful. I wanted to pick up on Kanye Mlambo's comment, and Kanye was saying how wonderful it is to listen to a friend and to know that this is all true. The most authentic leader, brother, and friend. Bonolo, thank you so much for your generosity towards me as well. So I want to wrap it up on a few, on maybe one or two questions, and then I'll release you into the evening. Thebe, what do you think makes you difficult to lead? I already have some ideas, but I'm keen to, because I loved your take on authenticity. I love your take on self awareness, your take on acceptance. But I think part of that conversation is realizing within ourselves what makes us difficult to lead. Because if we don't, we also don't allow ourselves to be led in moments where we should be led. Do you know what the answer to that is?
I think for me is because I am constantly renewing, I'm constantly searching, I'm constantly climbing. And because of that, it becomes very difficult for people, one, that work for me to keep up, and two, for those who want to lead me to box me into one place. Because you see, if you're leading sheep, if you say left, they all go. If you go right, they all go. Everywhere I've worked, Colgate, Nike, Sun International, they're all going to tell you he is impossible to lead because he questions everything, he challenges everything, and he's constantly resetting the goals. And that's how I am. And that's what makes me difficult to lead. And and one of my favorite former employees, Chapan Makofan, probably one of the smartest strategists I've come across. He says to me, Mr. T, every time I go home, I tell my wife, baby, I've just come out of another masterclass. So because I'm constantly reading, and because if you're not reading, you can't lead. And if you lead somebody like me, it means you have to be on top of your game. It means that you must constantly be reading yourself, because somebody like me, when you are here, they've already gone past. So how are you going to lead somebody like that unless you are also constantly going forward?
Yeah. My final question to you tonight, Thebe, is that as you think about everybody who's either made time tonight to join this call or will be watching this conversation a little bit later, what's the one thing that you want us to sort of go into the night with? The thing that we must never remember, never forget rather, and that you would have us remember from here on?
I think it is Oscar Wilde who said, be yourself, everybody else is taken. And because I think if you can strive to find your authentic self, overcome any challenge. Most of us are other people, and that's why we struggle to break through.
Thebe Ikalafeng, thank you very much. You have been absolutely exceptional, and you have gifted me so much in this conversation. And I know I don't speak for myself only. We appreciate you. We love you. And we keep learning from you each and every day. Thank you, Budwam. Thank you so very much. And to everybody who's watched, who's joined, who's commented, appreciate you very much. And here's to another masterclass series in the bag with Dr. Thebe Ikalafeng.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nozi. This is an amazing show. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're
Bye,
amazing.
everybody.
It's been. Thank you. Bye.